Okay, Moshe informed the people that they're going to be entering the land soon without him, that Yehoshua is going to lead them. But there's an unfinished thing they have to do. They have to wage a war against Midian. They have to stop them. They have to keep them from letting this be part of the picture of what this world is like. So it was a very limited war. He only permitted 1,000 people to come from each tribe, which is a very small number of people, relatively speaking. But, and this will give you a picture of what the war was about, unlike any other war that was ever fought by the Jews in the time when they were keeping halacha, the Levites went out for this one. So the reason for it is that the serious intent had nothing to do with the usual motivations of war. Why are wars usually fought? Think about wars that you know something about. It's about land. What else is it about? Control. This wasn't about land. It wasn't about control. It was about making it impossible for these two tactics, hiring somebody to lower somebody else's spiritual level, and all of the stuff with Bilam to be part of the world's accepted natural course of events. So, not surprisingly, because they're still in the desert, miracles, of course, they won the war. But what was interesting about this is they knew this was the last thing that would happen before they cross over and leave Moshe behind. But Moshe was the most enthused of all of them. He had no natural reluctance to say, well, this is my last mission, and sort of holding on to it. He said, this is what they need to do, so they'll do it. When they came back from the war, they had a lot of stuff, the way people do. So the Torah digresses now and teaches us how to take non-kosher vessels and make them kosher. So I'm going to talk about now, and this will be what our class is about, is the basic laws of what makes a vessel kosher, what makes a vessel not kosher, how would you make it kosher, what's it all about. So the first premise, and this is a big premise, the laws of kosher, not kosher are only relevant to Jews. So if there was something unhealthy about, let's say, pig or cheeseburgers, then the rest of the world would have a significantly lower life expectancy than we do, which is, of course, not the case. It's not about that at all. These laws are about our self-definition as a people. So it has two dimensions. One is what it keeps us from, and the other is what it leads us to. So bear with me. Keeping kosher specifically. So how does keeping kosher affect your life? Like when you go home and now you're keeping kosher, how does it affect your life concretely? It's hard. You can't eat with your non-Jewish and secular friends in a restaurant. Unless you take them to a kosher restaurant, so I could tell you some stories about that. Okay. Your parents' kitchen is not kosher, so this is like, this is a big deal. How does it affect you in life? You have to think. You can't just see it and put it in your mouth. That's the old method. If you're lucky, you pay. But pay, put it in your mouth. How does it affect you? Yes, you're choosing to limit your freedom. Yes.
I feel like also physically I feel healthier just because I can't eat junk food and go out to Burger King or McDonald's.
You should make aliyah. Then you can go eat junk food, go out to the Israeli equivalent of Burger King, the whole deal. So I want you to know that all of these responses are part of what the mitzvah is meant to keep you away from. So that means it does create a certain level of social barrier between you and your non-Jewish and secular friends, and that's part of the intent of the mitzvah. Yes. So I'm going to give you more information soon. Meaning it's not just like an unfortunate result that nobody could have anticipated, it's part of the plan.
Another say you shouldn't have non-Jewish friends?
I'm not telling you yet what it says, but I am saying that this is it's part of the plan. Another part of the plan is it makes you decide who you are. It makes you decide, am I on the bus or am I off the bus? Because anything that exists only in your mind, you could play a lot of games with. I have a lot of faith in God. I just also have a lot of faith in me. Okay, whatever. But you either are putting the food in your mouth or you're not. Okay, so I'm going to start with that before I go back to this, which is another important thing. So this takes us to what our relationship is to the non-Jewish world. Okay, so there are two schools of thought that are predominant today, and then there's the traditionalist view. One school of thought is that there should be no barriers between us and the non-Jewish world, which is, of course, what you grew up with. So what's wrong with that way of thinking from an objective perspective is you can't say we're separate from you and not separate from you. It doesn't make sense. Either we do have a specific mission that's unique and different, and from that place we could share it, or we don't have a specific mission and we're not unique and different. Okay, you understand this? You have to decide whether you have a self and you'll share that self, or whether you don't have a self. Okay, so this is a very big decision, and it has very wide implications for everything in your life. So to understand this a little bit better, another thing that comes from this approach, why do Jews need a specific land like Israel? Which I don't know if you're aware of this. If you ever studied the history of Reform Judaism, they resisted the idea of having a specific land. And in fact, have you ever seen a Reform prayer book? Yeah. So there are no references to the land of Israel, return to Jerusalem, sacrificial offerings, nothing. And the reason is they saw this as anti-universalist, which it is. Judaism is not a universalist religion. The belief in Judaism is if you want to give, you have to first have something to give. So the idea of having a separate land so we could create a society that's exemplary requires our not living everybody else's life. So the Jewish view is that everyone has something to contribute, and therefore the differences between peoples are positive. So eating draws you close to the person who you're eating with. Could you see where this is so? This is what
the third closest relationship you can have with
like eating with them. Yeah. This is the whole restaurant culture, which is like so predominant in the Western world nowadays. That's what it's all about. Like when you go to a really expensive restaurant, have you ever like had someone take you to a really, really expensive restaurant? So what's all of this about? It's not about the food. It's about the atmosphere and the feeling, yeah? So the feeling of separateness is certainly the traditional view, and universalism is not. Another approach that people have to keeping kosher is wanting to bring it down to being something physical. So you'll see what I call apologeticist literature, where they'll talk about like, wow, Jews don't get trichinosis. Wow, isn't that, which is true. Do you know what that is? It's yeah, and when they had the whole mad cow issue in England, Jews weren't affected. That's not what it's about. It's not what it's about. You have to be really clear on that. Okay. So there are two other effects that we have to go into. One is making real decisions. This is especially relevant in family life. So the way Hashem wired us on purpose is that we all want our parents' love and approval, and we should. And in fact, the fourth commandment is what? Okay, so the fifth commandment is honoring your parents. So the fact that you want to please your parents is as it should be. Okay. So the premise in this, that keeping kosher, which could act as a barrier in the home, okay, is meant for you to ideally go in with your parents, meaning not I keep kosher and you don't, haha, okay. This is something I learned. This is something I want to share. And if they don't want to share it with you, to still treat them respectfully. So what I've discovered over the years in Neve is that oftentimes people who don't have good relationships tend to use religion as a reason to justify their bad relationship. That's not what it is. So I want to tell you how to bring your parents into the picture, which doesn't mean how to convert them into being you. Okay, so here's the first thing. Okay, always be prepared. So what you don't do is to come home from Israel with no preparation, so your parents have no idea that you want to keep kosher, and say, oh, I want to keep kosher. That's not the way to do it. Okay, you let them in the loop. You say, this is something I want to try. This is something important to me. Okay, the next thing, realize obviously this isn't important to them. So all of the effort has to be made by you. So you have to be prepared to purchase your own throwaway dishes, a couple of pots. And before you go, this is a must if you're serious about doing this right. You must consult with Rabbi Schwab or any other rabbi to find out the most lenient ways to keep kosher in your home. Okay, yeah? After you've done that, okay, what you're going to face is two obstacles. One is many parents feel you're keeping kosher as emotional rejection. You won't even eat my food? Okay, whatever. So you have to be twice as respectful, 3 times as respectful as you would otherwise be. You have to thank them every time you eat a kosher meal in your home. You have to thank them for being tolerant, for understanding you, for caring, because they are, because that's true. The next is you have to be able to explain what you're doing at least somewhat. So here's what I don't mean. Your mother's saying, what is this milk, meat? Like, it's just as healthy without it, yeah? So don't give her a 5-hour lecture on defilement, ritual purity, the nature of the spirit. Short, this is the word. This is your short. It's part of the Torah. Okay, from the perspective of the Torah, it changes who we are in terms of our identity and our spirituality. And here's your clue words. You ready? Remember these words. Would you like to know more? Okay, if the answer is no, what do? Shut up and accept it. Okay? Shut up and accept it. If the answer is yes, the best thing you could do you have a relationship with the rabbi who lives near you? That's a good question. Why don't we consult with Rabbi Smith, Brown, Cohen, whatever his name is, okay? I'm sure he knows a lot more than I do. He's a rabbi. I was in Neve for 15 minutes. Okay, clear? Okay. Got this? Don't try to be the rabbi. Okay, next thing. So we have our rules. Prepared, explain in short, offering options. And the last one is you may not get approval. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. So I'm going to give you a bit of comfort for your future, but this is a long-term future comfort. Keeping kosher is one issue, keeping Shabbos is another issue. Dressing modestly, if you choose to go that way, is another issue. I'll tell you when it'll all be forgiven. You ready? Okay. As soon as you have a baby, it's all forgiven. And I want to tell you my proof of this. We have family friends. We were living in the north at one point, in a little moshav called Segev. Our nearest Jewish neighbors, who were not all that near, it was in the middle of the Arabs, okay, were a moshav called Yodfat. So the people on this moshav are so far left that if the world was flat, they would have fallen off. Okay, they once had a spiritual evening, and they invited a monk from an abbey to speak to them on matters of the spirit, because, what would a Jew know about this? You know, this is where they are. Okay, so it was during the Yom Kippur War. The men were called up, and one of the men from Segev, as a result of things he had seen, there's a story attached to this, and at a different time I'll tell you the story, realized that Israel's existence is miraculous. He realized that the commanders in the army are just people, and they make mistakes. He was in a tank, actually. The tanks then, I don't know if this is still true, had 12 people, and everybody had a very defined job. So his job was being what they called then the camp mommy, the tank mommy, which means he had to keep it clean and warm up the food. And, you know, it was like the lowest of all the jobs. There was a little portal where he could see outside. One of his jobs was when radio messages came in, I'm sure it's more efficient now, he had to press buttons to transmit the message to the tank commander. Okay, so the control box was with him, because the tank commander had to see what was going on visually. He got a message. He was told that the tank has to turn directions. They have to move from north to south, because if they continue where they're going to go straight into the Syrians. But he could see from the window that the message was wrong. They had to go, the Syrians are coming from the opposite direction than he was told. So he had to decide in a second, will he transmit the message or will he not transmit the message? What would you do if you were him? Not transmit, but that's easy for us to say. In the army, the one thing that's drummed into you from minute number one is you obey commands. It took a second, he didn't transmit it, but it wasn't an easy minute. But he realized afterwards, the people who are tank commanders are just human, and the generals are just human, and the prime minister is just human, and they make mistakes. They're the same people who work in the bank and in Misrat HaPnim. Oh no, okay, whatever. So he realized Israel's existence is miraculous and he became interested in religion. So fast forward, this is like 10 years, no, it was more, 15 years down the line. He became completely religious, left the kibbutz, lived in Kfar Chabad, became a rabbi, now is the kashrus rabbi in Alon Moreh, okay, which has a guest house. His mother was, his first life on on Yodfat was because he was a true son to his mother. His mother was a friend of Golda Meir, a personal friend of Golda Meir. They were on kibbutz together. So his mother was appalled by all of this. I can't even tell you, appalled isn't the word. I saw this with my own eyes. They were in Jerusalem for the day. His mother was taking out the grandkids, right? A wind came, one of the little boy's kippahs blew into the road. So she said, don't run into the road. Go like this with your hands. I'll get your kippah. Okay, got this? That I would see her, tell a little boy to put something on his head so that everything will be forgiven when there are grandchildren. Okay, got this? So this is a temporary phase. You may have to take some heat. That's okay. This is on purpose. It's God's plan. And I want to give you an illustration of this that's extreme and not like your family. Okay, Avram's father was an idolater. Avram could have been born to anyone. This was on purpose. His father's beliefs were so strongly held that he's the one who turned Avram into the authorities for the tenacity of his belief in God. Now, just be Avram for a moment. Suppose you had a different kind of father. Picture a California father. Are any of you from California? You'll understand that. So the kind of father who says, Avi, if you're happy, I'm happy. That's what life's about. Just be. Okay, just chill. It's okay. That wouldn't have been good for Avram. He needed to break idols in order to be Avraham. Do you understand what I mean? He would have been somebody else if he didn't have to break idols. You have to be who you are, and part of that may be experiencing a certain amount of difficulty. Okay, another aspect of kashrus in the terms of the negative, what it tells you not to be, is everything about kashrus tells you not to be impulsive. So I'm going to give you an equation. Okay, I'm going to assume that we all eat impulsively at least some of the time. Is that true? Yeah. Okay. You're all familiar with, the legend of eating 3 times a day. You've heard that nonsense? Okay. Is there anyone in this room who only eats 3 times a day? Here, yeah. Oh, here. No, here there were little between classes, snacks and coffees and, they took away the machine. I was thinking this is going to change people's lives. Well, the machine I'm talking about. The coffee machine. Not coffee, the iced coffee machine.
Oh, they took it away?
Just at least for the day, maybe it's being repaired. I was just thinking, I know people who are going to be in nervous breakdown land. There are people who cannot handle this. Okay, so bear with me. You are one person, but you have many aspects to your personality. So the way this is spoken about in Kabbalah language is the animal soul and the spiritual soul. They do battle for your identity. They're both you. It's not like there's the real you and the not real you. They're both you. The whole premise of the battle for your identity is one that's ongoing and one that you're not going to win completely ever. But you progress. Life is for the progression, it's not for a final victory. Whenever you eat impulsively, quickly, more than you should, when you shouldn't, the animal self is strengthened. So that means you learn to equate immediate gratification with pleasure. This equation is not good for you. Could you see where this is so? Okay. So there's an additional factor in you, not the animal soul, but the Yetzer Hara. The animal soul is not evil. It could be redirected. It's fine. It's part of you and it belongs as part of you. But we also have a part of us that's a little bit on the evil side, the part that loves destruction. So the part of us that loves destruction is a master at using the animal soul against the spiritual soul. How? So the Yetzer Hara in the Gemara has 7 names. One of them is enemy. So I want you to picture yourself in a food disaster. Okay, no, don't go there. You're at, let's see what's a real food temptation. You're at a party and they're serving buffet style. Okay, you had a party last night? Oh, Rivka's board. Yeah, like Rivka's board. It was so much and so good. Like it wasn't only much, it was good. Okay, so picture this, a buffet like this, and also like with hot dishes, which this one didn't have. And what else could be really hot dishes? And a chocolate fountain. You've ever seen a chocolate fountain? Okay. So you're there, but there's not quite enough, unlike Rivka's Wort. Okay, got this? It's all great, but they were clearly expecting maybe 30 people and 50 people showed. Okay, so now you realize if you don't get to, now think of what you liked the best on the buffet table. Okay, you're there. If you don't get to it fast, you're not going to get it at all, okay? Could you picture yourself like, figure, well, if I move over here, I won't really push her, but I'll kind of maneuver myself, okay, so that I get it before she could reach it. Okay, you could picture thinking like this? Okay. So your Yetzer Hara, the evil part of you now, is presenting itself not as your enemy, but as your best friend, as your lawyer. You need this, you deserve this, you should have this, okay? And, she's just like an obstacle. This is like, okay, got this? Okay, so every time you do any act of self-restraint, you've gained something in self-esteem. Because self-esteem only comes from the spiritual self. The animal self does not give you self-esteem. Okay, the kosher laws are meant, if nothing else, to make you able to say no to the animal self. So all of the difficulty is not a surprise to God, it's part of the package, it's meant to be there. Okay, so now we have things that being kosher is meant to keep you away from not having a distinct national identity, away from having an indistinct personal identity. You want the spiritual self to be victorious. Last thing, before we go into the positive. Okay, everything that has value requires some degree of focus. Could you see where this is so? So even simple games have rules. So did you ever play any kind of a game with a child of around like 7, 8 where they're cheating all the time? Okay. How long do you have any desire to continue the game? Not long. So the reason is what makes the game worthwhile is that you have to achieve something to win. So in life, our feeling of self-satisfaction is contingent on the amount of effort we put into achieving whatever goal we had. Could you see where this is so? Okay, so the more effort you have to put in, the more you treasure the goal. So this is something all humans feel. The trick is finding the right goals. You understand this? So you remember the song, "Climb every mountain, ford every stream." You know what I'm talking about? From The Sound of Music. So this isn't true. There's no particular reason why you should climb every mountain do something that will make you a better person and the world a better place. There are lots of things that people put loads of effort into and feel like genuine accomplishments that are not accomplishments. Give me another example besides climbing every mountain and fording every stream.
Finishing elementary school.
Well, no, you have to finish elementary school.
Yeah, well, you can learn to read and write somewhere else.
Yeah, you could, which is why, by the way, homeschooling is one of the many things in life I was wrong about. We've had over the years a number of girls in Neve who are homeschooled, and my picture would be on the basis of the time, like what has to be taught is much less than would be on a normal school curriculum. So I thought they wouldn't know that much and that they would be socially undeveloped. Completely untrue. In every possible way, homeschooling was very, very good. I was shocked at how little they have to know, though. I have a friend who has 2 children who are both ADHD and extreme. So keeping them in school was a big challenge to her. The schools don't want them. I mean, it wasn't a challenge to her, it was a challenge to the schools. So she finally found a place. She lives in Chicago. One of the day schools was willing to have her 2 little boys only half a day, because they could more or less, with Ritalin, sit half a day. So she put them in the first half so they could learn Torah in school. And she had to take on teaching them all their secular subjects. Now, they inherited something from her. It's called ADHD. So she's going to teach. This isn't going to work. Okay, whatever. So she got the state curricula. It's nothing. The expectations that the state of Illinois has is nothing. Okay, now remember, her kids don't like to sit. She doesn't like to sit. How long do you think she has to spend every day teaching her kids?
An
hour and a half. You're right. That's it.
Because you're being taught to take the exams, that's it.
I mean, her kids knew, the amount of information they're expected to know is and this is in the public schools, that's really all the kids have to know. It's just so appalling. Okay, in any case, what else, tell me another achievement other than going to school that's really not an achievement.
Completing a season on your Kiwi baseball league.
Yeah. Staying size 2, okay? If you're a natural size 2, that's good. But if you're not, maybe it's not the biggest accomplishment you could achieve in life. When I was young, this is politically incorrect nowadays, so they don't talk about this. There are 3 basic body types that are called ectomorph, endomorph, and metamorph. So, okay, think about your neck for a moment, okay? If you have a long neck, you will have a longish middle, and you will have a smaller waist. If you have a short neck, you will have a thicker middle. If you have a medium-sized neck, okay, got this? So we've created a whole society in which all of the polar bears are trying to be swans, and it's it's not happening. It's just some people are polar bears. That's as it's meant to be. Okay. Okay, and the amount of self-hatred that this generates is phenomenal. Okay, which I find ironic, the amount of self-hatred, especially that women feel for being overweight, is huge. But the weight of obesity in America is only getting more. So my theory is, I don't know if this is true or not, but it's my theory, that the more you talk to people about the importance of being thin, the more self-hatred they have and the more they eat. Okay.
Because it's completely misguided. We're taught in the Western world, we're taught that skinny is good. Not that you should be healthy and you should
exercise. No, it's about good and bad. It's about good and bad. Listen to the vocabulary people use. When people are on a diet, they'll say, I was so good today. Translate that. I didn't eat. Next day, I was so bad. Translate that. I ate. You would think the first day there were Mother Teresa and the next day there was Stalin. No. Okay. So in any case, kashrus is an achievement. So an achievement to be real isn't just self-discipline. It has to lead you towards something positive. So the positivity of kashrus isn't just where you don't go, but where you do go. So the idea there is that the laws of kashrus do take you to have a certain level of spiritual refinement. So the fact is, we don't know, from a rationalist perspective, we don't know that much evidence on it. We know some. When the Torah was given, they didn't have anything. So I'm just going to give you over the one piece of evidence that's pretty distinct. Okay, so in MIT, they weren't checking out kashrus, trust me. Okay, what they were checking out is whether memory is electrical or chemical. Do you understand what I meant by that? Okay, so to do this, they had, of course, rats in a control group, They wanted to see what would happen under these circumstances. One group of rats were taught to go through a maze. They learned the maze. How do you get rats to learn a maze? Cheese and little shockies if you make a mistake. Okay, whatever. So they learned the maze. Okay, the successful rats learned the maze. So they got killed. They were killed, and then they were chopped up. And then the control group was divided into two. Half of them ate the rats that learned the maze, and the other half ate whatever else they give them in MIT, which is also not worth thinking about too much, especially not before lunch. The group of rats that ate the rats that know the maze consistently learn the maze a third quicker. Okay, what? So this was repeated many times.
You're saying we should eat frog people?
No, what I'm saying is that this proves that memory is chemical primarily, not electrical, although it's also electrical, it's primarily chemical, and that what you eat affects your body chemistry enough to have an effect on the way you think. That's what it proved. So the assumption in kosher, especially not eating blood, not eating the animal blood, is that the effect of it on your chemicals, which is discernible and describable and, and everything else that would make it scientific, is that it definitely affects you. There's not even a question about it. If any of you were into anthropology in the old days,
Yeah.
I liked it. So did you study Africa?
Yeah, I studied, multiple field studies.
Oh, great. So you might recall that the Mauis, their relationship to cows is very intense. Like their whole hierarchy of gods are cows, ownership is cows, wealth is cows. They do rituals in which they sort of become cows for the ritual. They do rituals in which they kill cows and eat their raw blood and urine to bring themselves into a frenzy.
They turn the urine actually in now. It's like nutrition of food, and they turn it. It's very nice.
Yeah, but it definitely affects them. I mean, they really do go into a frenzy. It's not like, okay, so not that we're likely to do this, and we are going to have a nice, wholesome Neve lunch any moment, okay, is that this is really part of you. It's really part of you. So the kosher laws are much more extreme than you could possibly imagine on the outside. If you didn't know them from the inside, you would never know that, like, the dishes that absorb a minimal amount are still going to affect you. So we have the bottom line here is that part of doing war against Midian is not eating from their dishes. And this is what I'm leaving you with today. And now have lunch.
My family is going out to a tray sushi restaurant that
Yes.
they always go out to, and I say I'm not going because it's straight and I can't go, and they throw a fit. What do I mean, obviously I'm going to stand my ground, but how do you suggest going about
So I'll give you
Maybe
three.
go and sit there and just go have a beer.
I'll give you three options. One is come up with an alternative. So I don't know where do you live?
Chicago.
Are there good kosher restaurants there?
There's good kosher sushi restaurants, but they're about like a 40-minute drive compared to the 10-minute drive.
Are there good other restaurants?
There are. In my suburb, I live in the suburbs, there are no
No.
kosher restaurants now.
Okay, so one option that you might consider, okay, is as soon as they say let's go out, say, look, you know I'm not going to eat what you eat. You know that and I know that. Here's an option, you you consider it's further, it's maybe more expensive, but that way we can all eat together.
Yeah.
They'll either say yes or no, right? There are two possibilities. If they say yes, you have to pour on the gratitude because they deserve it.
Yeah.
It's not just like a no. If they say no, so you leave them with the feeling that they made the choice,
Okay.
which changes the politic there a little bit.
Okay.
Okay, that's your choice, fine. Okay. Method number 2.
Yeah.
You eat a serious meal before you go. You sit in the restaurant with them, order drinks, whatever it is.
You're allowed to order a drink even if it's a trade restaurant?
You could order like a cola. Not,
Yeah.
Okay, order a drink, sit with them, and saying, I normally wouldn't even want to be here.
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I want your company.
Yeah.
Okay, that's an option.
Okay.
The third option would be to tell them, what do you prefer?
Yeah.
Okay?
Like give them the options.
More, yeah.
Okay, we'll do. Thank you.